Never judge people by their appearances. That's what my mother taught me. But my mother-in-law was different. From the moment she laid eyes on me, she had already determined my worth. Brooklyn, 15 winters ago. A room in an old apartment building. Snow had begun to fall outside. The warmth seeping from the radiator brought comfort to the small space. My mother Sarah was changing into her uniform for her second job, the night shift as a waitress. At the kitchen table, I was absorbed in my design homework, textbook spread out before me, when Mother smiled at me kindly. "Emma, I'm leaving you a sandwich in the fridge for a late snack. And some hot soup too." Even then, I hadn't missed the fatigue hidden behind my mother's smile. Mornings at the supermarket checkout, nights at the diner. As a single mother, she worked without rest to pay for my education. On the worn sofa lay 2 of her uniforms, carefully ironed. "Mom, maybe I should get a part-time job too." "No way. You focus on your studies. Besides..." Mother glanced at my design textbook. Scattered across the desk were my sketches, fashion brand logos and package design exercises. "You have talent. You'll become a wonderful designer, I'm sure of it." Those words set the course of my life. I had loved drawing since childhood, and I decided to pour everything into honing that talent. I earned a scholarship to Parsons School of Design. Days in class, nights in the study room working on assignments. While my classmates hit the bars in Soho or parties in the East Village, I holed up in the library. Weekends were spent touring museums, absorbing everything from contemporary art to classic design. The brand logo I created for my graduation project caught the eye of a tech startup, and that's where my career began to take off. 15 years later. At 34, I had built a solid reputation as a freelance graphic designer, working from a WeWork office overlooking Bryant Park. I designed logos and packaging for luxury brands, and was frequently featured in industry magazines. AD Week named me one of 30 designers shaping the next generation, and my Instagram following had surpassed 100,000. That year, on the first snowy day, my life took a dramatic turn at a luxury jewelry brand launch event in the Plaza Hotel's Grand Ballroom. Under the glow of chandeliers, my designed brand logo was prominently displayed. "This design is innovative. Classical yet somehow fresh. Did you create it?" A tall man holding a champagne glass stopped in front of the logo. Dressed in a deep blue Tom Ford suit, he carried an air about him like someone from an old movie. His composed demeanor and intelligent gaze left an impression. "Yes, it's my design. I'm Michael Blackwood. I'm one of the investors in this brand. I've actually been following your portfolio for a while." His manner was gentle, his gaze sincere. None of the intimidating attitude so common among Manhattan investors. That night, in a corner of the venue, we talked about design, art, and life. Mom still lives in the same Brooklyn apartment. When I visit, it's like time has stood still, but I find that comforting. That's lovely, having a place that doesn't change. You know, I actually loved my grandmother's old apartment too. Michael nodded quietly. At that moment, I was certain that he too saw beyond surface glamour. Over the next year, our relationship deepened naturally. Time with him felt like an escape from New York's chaos. Picnics in Central Park, dates at the Metropolitan Museum, dinners at small Italian restaurants in Brooklyn. He even visited my mother's apartment on weekends, praising her homemade lasagna as the best I've ever had. Let's get married. Michael proposed on the Metropolitan Museum's rooftop garden. As Manhattan skyscrapers glowed in the sunset, I nodded without hesitation. Everything I had built in my life seemed to exist for this moment. But at that time, I didn't know. This engagement would bring unexpected trials to my life. And everything I had built would nearly be undone by just one woman. Between Madison and Park Avenue, in the quiet residential streets of the Upper East Side. In front of an elegant brownstone unchanged since the 19th century, I took a deep breath. The winter air stung my lungs. It'll be fine, Emma. Mother will love you. Michael gently squeezed my hand. On the door, a brass plate engraved with black wood gleamed in the setting sun. Before ringing the bell, I double-checked my appearance. A navy celine dress, meticulous hair and makeup. I had aimed for perfection. The drawing room we were led into was a perfect space. 18th century French antique furniture, hand-woven Italian carpets, impressionist paintings on the walls. Was that a Renoir? A painting of young women at an elegant celebration seemed to look down on me. As a butler quietly poured champagne, I heard footsteps descending the stairs. The sound of heels being absorbed by the carpet heightened the tension. Victoria Blackwood's first impression was one of dignity. A gray Chanel suit, Mikimoto pearl necklace at her throat. Not a strand out of place in her perfectly styled platinum blonde hair. She carried a beauty and authority that belied her 58 years. Welcome, designer. I didn't miss the sarcasm in those words. The room's temperature seemed to drop instantly. Mother, her name is Emma. Yes, of course. Emma Carter. Her tone in confirming my surname carried a hint of disdain. Her eyes appraised me as if evaluating merchandise at an auction. Lovely dress. On sale, was it? I designed it myself. Oh my. The conversation that followed felt like a refined interrogation. Where I grew up, schools attended, family occupations. Victoria's eyebrows moved slightly at each answer. The large fireplace in the drawing room was lit, but its warmth never reached my heart. A single mother. That must have been difficult. The tea she offered with those words mixed sympathy with contempt. She frowned as she watched my lipstick leave a mark on the rim of the expensive antique teacup. From that day forward, the wedding preparations became a living hell. At the luxury bridal shop Kleinfeld's, where Manhattan brides' dreams come true, I had my eye on a simple, elegant Vera Wang dress. Oh dear, isn't that over budget? Victoria's voice echoed through the fitting room. My friend Jessica shifted uncomfortably beside me. Besides, a Blackwood bride needs something more traditional. We're a family with 100 years of history, you know. The dress ultimately chosen was heavy and ornate, matching her taste. The person in the mirror looked like a stranger. From the guest list, my college friends were quietly removed. That cafe owner. The former waitress. I'm sorry, but this is a society debut. You understand, don't you? The Wall Street Journal will be covering it too. The flowers, food, music, she interfered with everything. Its Blackwood tradition became her shield. The caterer was Daniel, flowers by L'Olivier, chamber orchestra, all decided through her connections. On social media, my old photos began circulating mysteriously. Mother working at the diner, pictures of the old apartment, articles about my scholarship application. All from anonymous accounts. The photos were shared among young society women with the hashtag #NewMoneyBride. Michael, It's Mother's way of showing love. I'd be happy if you could get used to it. He smiled kindly, but anxiety lurked in his eyes. The weight of the engagement ring seemed to increase day by day. The 3-carat Tiffany diamond sometimes felt like a chain binding me. And I convinced myself that enduring this pressure was proof of love. 1 month until the wedding. The Plaza Hotel's grand ballroom, 300 guests. Society's finest faces and media coverage. Everything was perfectly planned. I was about to become the star of a show assembled through Victoria's connections, bringing together Manhattan's upper class. But in this perfect plan, I was gradually losing myself. The person in the mirror seemed like a stranger. Makeup, hairstyle, posture, everything was being remade to Victoria's standards. Then came the fateful day. The late autumn sun streamed into the Plaza Hotel on Fifth Avenue. None of us could have predicted the tragedy that awaited. In the bridal suite at the Plaza Hotel. Before a large mirror, a stylist was putting the finishing touches on my hair and makeup. The wedding dress lace sparkled in the morning light. "Emma, are you nervous?" Mother gently placed her hand on my shoulder. She looked unusually radiant in her navy dress, newly bought for today. "I'm fine, Mom." As I answered, I was digging my nails into my palms. The door to the suite opened without a knock, and Victoria entered. Her eyes briefly appraised Mother's dress as she stood in her ice gray Armani gown. "Oh my, that dress. Target." At those words, Mother's expression clouded. I almost stood up but was held back by the stylist. "It's from Saks Fifth Avenue. I saved up for my daughter's special day." "Oh. I see." Just then, the wedding planner rushed in. "How are the preparations coming? It's almost time for the ceremony." She fell silent mid-sentence, noticing Victoria's gaze. "This bouquet won't do. It needs to be wider, more modest." Victoria snatched my bouquet and tossed it to an assistant. The wedding began. Bach's Ave Maria filled the grand ballroom. 300 pairs of eyes were on me. Manhattan society, Michael's business associates, media. In all their gazes, I sensed expectation and something else. Throughout my walk down the aisle, I felt Victoria's cold stare on my back. When I faced Michael at the altar, I didn't miss the anxiety in his eyes. The reception began, and the grand ballroom transformed into an elegant social gathering. Champagne flowed, and a live orchestra played. At the tables, refined society conversation floated through the air. It all felt like a scene from a movie. Time for the speech. The wedding planner whispered in my ear. I began walking toward the marble staircase. The hem of my white wedding dress trailed elegantly on the steps. Taking the microphone, I drew a deep breath. Thank you all for coming to our wedding today. That's when it happened. A sudden strong force from behind, and my body pitched forward. The white dress floated in slow motion. The marble stairs rushed toward my face. Ah! A scream echoed through the venue. Violent impact. Then darkness. Just before consciousness faded, I heard a cold voice. I saved my son. She was deceiving him. It was Victoria's voice. The venue froze. Smartphone flashes went off, shutters clicking. As society's elite watched in shock, my consciousness gradually sank into darkness. The white dress slowly turned crimson. As ambulance sirens began wailing in the distance, my mother's words kept echoing in my head. Never judge people by their appearances. But sometimes the teaching was powerless in the face of cruel reality. My wedding had transformed into an Upper East Side scandal. And it would mark the beginning of my revenge. Just before losing consciousness, I had made my decision. I would never forgive this treatment. The light from the grand ballroom's magnificent chandeliers grew distant. And they sank into deep darkness. It became both the most glamorous and darkest day of my life. A private room at Lenox Hill Hospital. The autumn leaves of Central Park were visible through the window. I had been diagnosed with a mild concussion, a broken right arm, and back contusions. Wrapped in white bandages and 4 tubes, I was told I would need 3 weeks of hospitalization. In the silence of the luxury hospital, I kept replaying the wedding events in my mind. Miss Carter, time for your medication. All the nurses looked at me with pity. The New York Post had already reported the incident with photos under the headline Upper East Side Wedding Tragedy. Morning of the 3rd day after the accident. Michael had been visiting daily. Dark circles showed clearly under his eyes. His suit was slightly wrinkled, his tie crooked. He looked exhausted, unimaginably different from his usually impeccable appearance. Mother is worried about you. Worried? I smiled bitterly. He didn't understand the irony in those words. Emma, what about a settlement? Mother is really regretful. Fighting within the family any further. The Blackwood family's legal team had moved quickly. A settlement offer with suspended sentence. An extraordinary amount offered as compensation. That's apparently how the upper class resolves things. Everything with money. As if they could put a price on my dignity. Let me think about it. Michael's expression showed relief at those words. He still couldn't see his mother's true nature. Before I could answer, an elderly nurse came in to change my for Susan, according to her name tag. Around 65, with a kind smile. Her gentle manners somehow reminded me of my mother. We'll start rehabilitation tomorrow. Susan made conversation casually while efficiently changing the for Victoria Blackwood's daughter-in-law, aren't you? Must be tough. I remember her well. At those words, I looked up suddenly. There was something special in Susan's tone. She gazed out the window as if recalling old memories. After Michael left, she visited my room again. It was twilight, and long shadows stretched across the hospital room. Actually, I knew Victoria. We were in college together. Back when she still went by Victoria Mitchell. The truth Susan revealed far exceeded my imagination. 1980, Victoria was a student at SUNY. Back then, she worked at a diner in the Upper West Side. From a middle-class family, she needed to cover her own tuition. School in the morning, diner at night. A life exactly like mine had been. That girl, she was really desperate. But very smart. She always observed how upper-class customers talked and moved. Like an actress studying for a role. Victoria captured the heir to an old investment bank with her beauty and intelligence. The current head of the Blackwood family. But the price she paid was steep. She spent enormous sums erasing her past. Not just social media, but old newspaper articles and alumni directories. She eliminated every trace possible. Cut off contact with old friends, continuously playing the perfect upper-class lady. She must have seen herself in you. That's why she couldn't stand it. I caught my breath. Everything connected. Her abnormal reactions, excessive interference, and finally, violence. All stemmed from fear of her own past. That night, alone in my hospital room, I opened my laptop. Victoria Mitchell, using her maiden name as a lead, I began searching. Old alumni records, local newspaper microfilm, 80s yearbooks. Records from before digitization couldn't be completely erased. Another truth lay sleeping there. Beneath the perfect upper-class lady's mask. I stared at the young Victoria's photo on the screen. Smiling in her diner uniform, she looked like a different person from now. You can erase the past, but you can't erase people's memories. I decided to teach her that. On the hospital bed, I smiled quietly. A plan for revenge was gradually taking shape. Not a flashy retaliation. Just revealing the truth. Her true self hidden beneath the glamorous upper-class facade, what she feared most. The Great Hall of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Manhattan's social elite had gathered for the annual charity gala. Champagne bubbles sparkled, chandeliers glittered. In the center, Victoria Blackwood displayed her perfect smile. "Are you sure you're okay?" Mother looked at me worriedly. 1 month after the accident. The cast had just been removed from my right arm. Yes, perfect. Dressed in a deep navy custom-made gown, I smiled quietly. Victoria, serving as the events planning committee chair, reigned as society's flower. Under the flash of media cameras, she carried herself gracefully. Perhaps due to the accident, her expression tensed momentarily upon seeing me. "Oh, Emma. You're already out of the hospital?" Her voice carried a slight tremor. "Yes, Mrs. Victoria. Thanks to you," I answered calmly. As dinner time approached, attendees began taking their seats. The Great Hall's giant screen displayed the charity's mission statement. Now, allow me to explain this year's charity theme, Hidden Stories, True Values. Victoria took the stage. Her voice echoed through the hall. That's when it happened. The screen changed, displaying an old photograph. 1980, an Upper West Side diner. A young waitress in uniform, smiling tiredly. A murmur ran through the venue. "This is Victoria's voice trailed off. The color drained from her face. Hidden stories. We all have stories we keep hidden, I said as I slowly stood up. Victoria, you and I walked the same path. Middle-class families, working to pay for school, climbing our way up. But you were ashamed of your past and tried to erase it. Is that why you pushed me down those stairs? Out of that desperation. The room fell dead silent. Unlike you, I'm proud of my past. My mother working, my scholarship days, everything made me who I am today. The screen displayed photo after photo. Young Victoria, her family, records of her student days. Everything she had tried to erase. It's lies. Victoria's voice trembled. True value isn't about superficial things. You should know that better than anyone. I quietly approached and took her hand. Let's stop pretending. In that moment, tears spilled from Victoria's eyes. The mask she had maintained for years crumbled audibly. A deep silence fell over the venue. Then, someone began to applaud softly. It gradually grew into thunderous applause. The next day, I donated the entire settlement amount to a scholarship fund for low-income students. And I decided to divorce Michael. Until the end, he had been torn between his mother and me. But that was over now. I had decided to begin a new life. Never judge people by their appearances. Mother's words still live in my heart. But I learned something even more important. That there's never any need to be ashamed of the path you've walked. As I left the great hall, the autumn sunset streamed in beautifully. It was as if blessing the beginning of my new life.